No, I do not think that it is anywhere near the end of October nor the beginning of November. So I brought out a couple of my Dia de los Muertos things that I have for in the background of the Halloween slash, Day of the Dead videos that I did last year because I really just like them anyway, and I love the concept of Dia de los Muertos and everything. So this is going to be my review of Pixar's Coco that came out in 2017. It also happened to come out around the same time as Book of Life, which was, I think, kind of a coincidence because it's like these two movies that are very much based in like Mexican culture and about Day of the Dead and about characters going to the land of the dead and coming back and this, interaction between the two worlds. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to pick one over the other. I love both of them. And Pixar is kind of like a little bit, or Coco is a little bit of like Pixar's stab at like a musical because there's a lot of sung or incidental music going on in the background that's not just like the You've Got a Friend in Me in Toy Story, or the background music that's in like Brave or something. This is actually where the characters are actually singing in the show, which is a little bit different than what Pixar tends to do. Disney is, of course, what tends to go toward the musical side of things, but Pixar kind of took a stab at it with this one, and I think they did pretty dang good at it, in my opinion. So I am kind of also planning like a companion video to this one that's going to be me breaking down the Rivera family that is the main family that we see in the movie. I will do like a video where I break down like that family tree and the history a little bit more than what gets explained in the movie, based on like other additional material and stuff like that that's been published or that has been stated by the directors or the producers. But that'll be a different video because I didn't want to pull that into this video because this video is already going to be fun to edit anyway. But yeah, I pulled out a couple of my Day of the Dead and stuff, and I just love the concept of Day of the Dead and like that. I mean, like it kind of goes. I mean, it coincidentally, I don't know if it's 100% coincidentally, but it does land near All Saints Day, which is the November 1st in Christian. I was going to say Christian mythology, but Christianity and such. There's All Saints Day, which is kind of similar to Dia de los Muertos. I know that Dia de los Muertos unfortunately gets very conflated with like Halloween because there's like the masks and it kind of involves skeletons and skulls and everything like that, but it's not. Dia de los Muertos is of course in Mexican culture this concept that that on the Day of the Dead, those that have passed on that are in the land of the dead and the land of the remembered have the ability to come back to our side as long as their pictures are up on the ofrenda. A Book of Life and Coco have slightly different rules in that regard, but in Coco, which I'm just going to stick with the rules that they set up in Coco at the moment, if your photo is on the ofrenda, which is this beautiful kind of altar that different families have in their homes. Sometimes it's extended families that have like these big altars. Sometimes it's, family groups. It's a couple of smaller families coming together. Sometimes it's like friends that do that. I know that they mentioned in the bonus features that the people that were making Coco at the time at Pixar, so the director and the producers and like the casting people and the designers and the animators and everything like that, that they like made an ofrenda for like different family members that they had that had passed. And I very much love that concept of like, you leave the pictures out and on the Day of the Dead, on Dia de los Muertos, that, having that picture there means that your family have the ability to come back from the land of the dead and like their spirits can come across and come into our world and see us, and to a degree like they can see us and they can be around us, but we can't see them, unfortunately. But admittedly, if skeletons started popping up to me and talking to me like, "Hi, I'm your grandpa. Hi, I'm your grandma," I'll be like, I am so confused right now. But I love that concept of like your family coming back to be around you. All Saints Day or All Souls Day, that is, in Christianity, is usually a day where we remember those that have passed within the last year, and such. Within my church is usually when we kind of honor them and such like that for the the saints, the angels that have passed on from our church and gone into, their heavenly resting place is the way that they tend to refer to it at my church when we do that. And we signify them passing on, with bells and everything. We, read their names. And yes, for us, it is a little bit more of a solemn occasion, but for Dia de los Muertos, it's this huge party and everything, and I love it. It's like food and family and remembering and like just all this big party and music and everything like that. And what we find out throughout the course of the movie, so I'm actually going to get into the movie now as opposed to a bit of, why I love Dia de los Muertos. In the movie, we are introduced to the Rivera family, and this family is, I think it's like 4 or 5 generations at this point in time. What we find out is the main character's name is Miguel, and through his eyes, we learn about the matriarch of their family, Imelda, who was the kind of the founding member of their family, that she and her husband had their daughter Coco, and like they had been very happy and they loved music. And I love how they tell like the beginning of the story with these beautiful tissue paper like art things that they made, and they're gorgeous, and like these are a real thing. They're gorgeous. I don't know if I'd have the patience to make them, but thank God for the people that do. But like they have the paper art that they use to like show kind of the progression of like the beginning of the story of, Imelda and her husband and, their daughter Coco being very happy and loving music. And then, the husband wants to go off and become a musician, and he leaves to pursue his music career and, leaving Imelda with a baby. Well, not a baby. Coco's probably like maybe 4, maybe 5 at the oldest at this point in time in the story. But Imelda, determined not to fail in raising Coco, she, pulls herself up by her own bootstraps, and she learns and learns how to make shoes. And she learns, she uses her ability to make shoes to be able to feed her and her daughter, and keep their house over their heads and everything. And they, she kind of founds this, Rivera shoemaking family. And we learn that she kind of pulls her like 2 younger brothers and other family members into it as they go along, because when Coco is old enough and she gets married, she brings in her husband, and the husband is raised in how to use and how to make shoes, and like on down the line, different ones marry into the family. They start learning how to make shoes. The kids learn how to make shoes. And it's this very, generation passed down. And, Imelda founded this family to a degree. She was the matriarch. And the thing that we also learn is that not only do they, shoes is what they make. The Riveras, they make shoes. They're very good, durable shoes from what we see them go throughout the course of the movie. So yeah, good on them for the good shoes. They look very high quality, and I wouldn't mind a pair. But we also learn that because of the fact that her husband, that Imelda's husband, when he left, went to go become a musician, she hates music. She has banned all music from her home. Her daughter, any of her other, siblings and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren and everything. And, that music is not allowed in this house. And we see that, so I'm like, so it's like Footloose, but on like a more extreme, smaller level with, it's like with Footloose, it's like no rock and roll and no, no dancing. With this, it's like just no music in general. I'm like, although given the fact that I do know that like religion and stuff like that is a very important thing in certain cultures, and I believe Mexican American cultures is one of those, or Mexican cultures is one of those, and I could be wrong, and I apologize if I am wrong. But I would think that, music would also just be important in regards to like, celebrations and stuff like that, but not for this family. There's no music in this household. And Miguel's grandmother, Elena, I think she's just called Abuela in the movie. So we have Mama Imelda, who is the founder of the family, and then we have Mama Coco, who is her daughter. And she had, I think Coco had 2 daughters, I believe. was 2 or 3 daughters. It was like 2 or 3 daughters, and she has Elena, and then she had another daughter, and I'll go over that a lot more in like the family tree Coco family tree video that I want to do. But what we see is that Grandma Coco is very old, very elderly, very kind of sits in her chair all the time, and Miguel adores his great grandmother. He loves her very much. Miguel is about 12 years old, and he is very energetic, and my nephew is very similar to him in this regard, and the fact of like story after story after story, and like spent just like whatever, and like he adores his grandma, and that's just wonderful. His great grandmother, and he adores his family in general, but Miguel of course wants to be a musician, and he idolizes this kind of like I'm assuming Ernesto de la Cruz is supposed to be a little bit, I kind of like describe him as like kind of like their version of like Elvis / like Bing Crosby, because of course Ernesto de la Cruz was just like, he was very in the movie he's this very popular musician and everything from like the 1930s and the 1940s, because they say that in 1942 is when he died, getting crushed by a giant bell during a performance, which I'm like, I'm sure there's karma in there somewhere. And what ends up happening is Miguel, of course, adores Ernesto de la Cruz, and he is in like Ernesto de la Cruz's hometown of Santa Cecilia. And Miguel, Ernesto de la Cruz is, as I said, he's like this combination of like Elvis and like Bing Crosby to a degree. Because like Bing Crosby was this did music and dancing a little bit, but like mostly acting and music and everything. And of course Elvis did the same thing, and this is like kind of this version of this character that was could sing and act and like had all these movies and everything like that in his like very kind of short-ish but very well-loved career. And Miguel idolizes Ernesto and wants to be like him, and he's even made like this like guitar and everything. And we just see how much his family despises music, and like it's on the Day of the Dead, and there's supposed to be this big music festival in like the town square type of a thing, and his parents and his grandmother want him to have nothing to do with it. We are also introduced to his dog at this point in time, Dante, named probably after like Dante Alighieri as in Dante's Inferno, because this movie kind of has a lot of references to kind of like Up and Down and like the bowels of hell, the Divine Comedy. And Dante is, I can't pronounce the name of the dog. Here's what it is called. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, but like it's shortened to a Xolo dog, Xolo. And these are actually the national dog of Mexico. They've been around for like several hundred years, if not like 1,000 years or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but like they're very beloved dogs in Mexico and everything. And Dante is not the brightest bulb in the closet. He's not the brightest bulb, but he's very sweet and very loyal to Miguel and everything. And we see, Dante, or we see Miguel interacting with his family and everything. We see him with his, we see his grandmother and his grandfather, and we see him with Grandma Coco, and we see him with his parents, and we see that his mother is pregnant, and we see that he has, his cousins and his aunts and uncles and everything around him. And like some of them are like kind of, ragging on him about him, liking music, because it's like if you're born into this family or you marry into this family, you have nothing to do with music. Which, I mean, okay, that in of itself, I will say this now, and I'll probably mention this in the family tree video. The fact that there are several different, men and women that have married into this family and to a degree have given up, music to be in this family shows how much that they truly loved their significant other. The fact that they are willing to give up this part of their culture, this part of their, well, not necessarily part of their culture, let me rephrase that, this part of their upbringing in regards to music to a degree, to be with this person that they love, and that kind of says something, in my opinion, in regards to how much like these different couples love each other, that we see in that regard. And we find out, we see this, that we see the ofrenda in the household of Miguel's family. Of there's his, I believe, his mama Imelda, who is of course the founder of the family, and we see that there's this picture of her holding a baby Coco, and then we see like this this guy off to the side, but like his face has been ripped out of the photo and everything and hidden away to a degree. And Coco seems to be going through probably a little bit of like Alzheimer's or something along those lines. She's in her wheelchair for pretty much the entire movie that we see her, taken care of by, all the different family members help take care of her and stuff like that. And she's just, she is a little bit, she keeps kind of asking if her father is home whenever someone mentions, Coco's father and everything like that. And like none of them say his name. They probably don't even know his name. And Milda probably hasn't said his name since he left. And to a degree, because like none of them say his name. They have no idea who he is. And what ends up happening is, Miguel, of course, he wants to go and play in this music contest, in the Plaza de la Cruz. And like his family is of course very much against it. Like, his grandmother, Elena, is, his abuelita is trying to, of course, be like, no, you don't need to do anything with music. You have your family here. We'll teach you everything. And, teach you everything you need to know about shoes and shoemaking and everything. And, she kind of, does the whole thing of, it was like the reason we put out these photos is so that way our family can come and visit us on Dia de los Muertos and everything like that. And, Miguel is, he's very upset with the fact that, like, his family to a degree is, it's like, they all are very much like, this is what we do. We are Riveras, we make shoes. But he doesn't want to do that. He, it's like, okay, I wouldn't say that it's not that he doesn't want to make shoes. It's that he wants to do something more than just make shoes. He wants to perform. He wants to sing. He wants to play his guitar that he made. And unfortunately, one of the things that ends up happening is Dante. First of all, his grandmother does not like Dante. She's like, never name a street dog. They will follow you everywhere. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Although I walked Rainy yesterday, and after I watched this movie, and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if you crossbred a Samoyed with one of these things, one of the Zolo dogs. I'm like, there would either be a very bald Samoyed or a very fluffy Zolo dog, and I'm like, I don't know which one would be funnier. But what ends up happening is, that thought popped into my head when I was walking, and I'm like, that's funny. But what we end up seeing is, Dante ends up climbing on top of the ofrenda, and he ends up trying to get food, and then that makes the picture of Mama Imelda and baby Coco fall and shatter, and Miguel picks up the photo, and he ends up unfolding part of the photo, and he sees this guitar in the photo, and it's the same guitar that Ernesto de la Cruz has. And Mama Coco happens to be in the room with him, and like nobody else is in the room. And he said, she's like, Papa, she's like identifying it, and like he asked, was Ernesto de la Cruz your dad? And like, first of all, I don't think that she is in the right state of mind to necessarily talk about that at the moment, but Miguel runs up and he grabs, one of the not CDs, one of the records that he has of Ernesto de la Cruz. And like earlier we had seen him watching these clips of like Ernesto de la Cruz playing, and like, Miguel trying to emulate him. Don't ask me how to play guitar. I can never remember which way you're supposed to hold the guitar. Not a me thing. Although I love the design that they have on this guitar in the movie. The guitar is gorgeous that they have, that Ernesto de la Cruz has in the movie. That's like the figure piece guitar of the movie is gorgeous, and I love it. And I would love to have a version of it, but it would just sit there and gather dust because I don't know how to play guitar. I know some people that know how to play guitar, but I am not one of them. And what ends up happening is Miguel runs out to his family, and he's just like, I know who my great-great-grandfather was. He was Ernesto de la Cruz, and, and I'm going to be a musician just like him. And, of course, this gets him in a lot of trouble with his family, and his abuela then destroys the guitar that Miguel had made. And, I mean, she's kind of doing it out of love because she very much runs their house the way that Mama Emilda did, and the fact of no music, nothing like that. And Miguel ends up, getting very upset with his family, and I would say rightfully so. I would say he has a right to get upset with his family in this regard, with his parents and his grandmother and his aunts and uncles and such that are there, and kind of watches this happen as this happens. And, his grandmother is like, do you want to be like this man? This, he was forgotten and left off of the family's ofrenda and everything like that. And he goes, I don't care about that. I don't want to be a part of this family anymore. And he grabs a picture and he runs off and he tries to run to the plaza, and, like he wants to play in the music, in the festival, but, he has to have a guitar and nobody will lend him a guitar. So he comes up with the brilliant idea, not a good idea, of breaking into Ernesto de la Cruz's mausoleum that is there, that has like his guitar there. And it's a beautiful building, I will give them that. And he breaks into there, and he climb on top of the coffin, and they get to the guitar, and he ends up getting shifted around to a degree, and it is revealed that he ended up kind of being shifted into the plane of like the land of the dead, and he starts being able to see all of these skeletons walking around that have clothes and everything, and he's just he can kind of see them interacting with like the world of the living and stuff like that. And then he ends up running into his family, the other Riveras that have passed on by then, some great uncles that he had, his grandfather, several others, some great aunts, and he is just like, they're all just like, oh my God, Miguel, what are you doing here? Wait a second, what are you doing here? And they're like happy, but then they're like very confused, and I don't blame them in the slightest. And Dante is the only living thing that can see him, and his family like pull him into the land of the dead. And the land of the dead in and of itself in this movie is just gorgeous. I love the detail that they went into in regards to designing this place. There's I think it's like Aztec or Incan art at the bottom, and then like as you go up, it like goes through different styles of building designs and everything, and I love it. And I'm going to say this now, I would love it if this place ended up being in Kingdom Hearts 4, and I'm going to do a different video where I talk about different worlds that I'm going to see in Kingdom Hearts 4, and this is one of them that I would love to see there. But one of the things that we also see is all these different colorful little creatures, and they're explained to be, these are alebrijes. They're like different spirit guides for different people, and it's just like, okay, well, that's pretty dang cool. They're like different creatures that look like the person that designed them was on acid and only had neon paint to work with, but they're gorgeous. I was thinking about, do I have anything that looks alebrije-ish in any of my stuff? And I'm like, well, the hedgehog kind of is a little bit like neon colored, but I'm like, no, I don't really think so. And what ends up happening is they get to basically this kind of like, where there's like this border between like the land of the dead and the land of the living. And we see, Miguel has to go through like, there's like customs, and it's like, like an airport to a degree with, getting scanned and everything. And we see these people like get these, people getting scanned to go into the real world, or to go into the land of the living. And, it's like, if your picture is out of Ofrenda, you can go through. If it's not, you can't really get through. And we see what appears to be Frida Kahlo show up, and I love Frida Kahlo. And, just, guy pretends to be Frida Kahlo, and then we find out that it's not Frida Kahlo, because he's just in kind of, cross-dressing drag and everything, trying to get, pretend to be Frida Kahlo to get into the land of the living. and he's this very kind of shabby looking skeleton in very shabby clothing. And he tries to go across, and he tries to climb across the bridge of like the flower petals that we see that make the bridge, and like he can't get through, and he's like taken away kind of like by like the TSA, and he's like dragged away, and he's just like, no, I just have to get to the land of the living, and he's like dragged away. And Miguel and his family, the Riveras, take him into kind of like the family reunions department of this of like the afterlife setup, because Mama Imelda cannot cross into the real world, cannot cross into the land of the living, and they need to find her and everything. And they're just like, okay, well, something is going on, something is not working. And they get there, and we see Mama Imelda, and like as I said, I'm going to do more of a family tree video about this. But Mama Imelda like sees Miguel, and she's like, Miguel, what are you doing here? It's just like, what's going on here? And like Miguel like holds up the picture that explains that like he has the picture. That's why Imelda can't cross over, because that's the picture that they put on the ofrenda. And she's like, it's just like, we have to get him to go back and everything, or else, I can't cross over. And then they end up having to talk to like this bureaucrat type thing that he's just like explaining, well, you're cursed. What? Okay. Miguel is cursed because he tried to steal a guitar from the dead on the Day of the Dead. Okay. And that's why he got sent to the land of the dead. And now he has to get his family's blessing in order to go back. And, they have to use like these flower petals that are like these flower petals and flowers that they've had all over the place out in the land of the living, and kind of flow into the land of the dead, make the bridges for the land of the dead. I do not remember the name of the flower, but they are gorgeous. And, Miguel is cursed, and it's just like, well, you have to use this flower petal, and you have to give him your blessing. And then you have to accept it, and then you can go back to the real world, back to the land of the living. Okay. And Miguel, Imelda is the one that's giving him the blessing, and she's just like, you will go back to the land of the living. I give you my blessing to go back to the land of the living, to return my picture to the ofrenda, and to never play music again. And he's just like, but you can't do that. And the bureaucrat guy's like, oh, it's her blessing. She can do what she wants with it. And what ends up happening is, he like accepts the pedal, then he goes back, and he just tries to steal the guitar again, and ends up back there. It's just like, you can't even do 2 seconds, can you? He tries to ask one of the other family members to give him their blessing instead, so that way he can still go back and do music, and like none of them are going to do it because they're either terrified of Imelda, or they're just like, no, I'm not doing that. Most of them are just like terrified of the concept, I think, of like going against Mama Imelda. I'm like, oh, I could believe that. I can very much believe that. And what ends up happening is Miguel goes, well, if none of you will give me your blessing to be a musician, then I'll just find my great-great-grandfather, and he can give me his blessing. And he runs out of the office, and he's like, his intention is to go to try to find Ernesto de la Cruz and get his blessing, because, he's like, oh, well, he's my great-grandfather. And, he's trying to escape, and he ends up coming across the skeleton, the very down-on-his-luck skeleton that he saw earlier trying to cross the bridge. And what ends up happening is, he was in customs, and he was, didn't get across, and, as I said, and, he's kind of being, kind of written up by their version of the TSA. And I like the fact that it's just like, he's like, you were like the TSA guy that's like, that's talking with him, and like, kind of, writing him up basically is it's just like, listing off the things that he did wrong, and it's like, you impersonated you falsified a unibrow. That's illegal? Apparently so. It's just like, I find that funny. And Hector and Miguel ends up finding Hector, and he's just like, okay, you said that Ernesto de la Cruz, because he was trying to bribe the guard with like, I'll get you tickets to Ernesto de la Cruz and everything like that, and everything. I used to know him. And Miguel's like, oh, well, you can help me find Ernesto de la Cruz, because he's my grandfather, and I need his blessing to get back to the human world, to the land of the living. And Hector like agrees to help him, and they end up escaping from like the family reunions bureau place or whatever. with, Miguel's family kind of on their trail. And Miguel and Hector end up then, like Dante's following them and everything. And they end up, going and getting like Hector or Miguel kind of disguised by using like what looks like grease and like face paint. And they get them all disguised to look like a skeleton. Because we also found out that one of the things that's happening is that the longer that Miguel is in the land of the dead, the more and more he kind of becomes a skeleton. We see this with his finger starts to turn, where you can like see his bone, and like, throughout the course of the movie, we see more and more of like his hands becoming, where you can see the bones in his hands. His like skin kind of becomes translucent, and you see the bones in his hands, because there's nothing alive in the land of the dead. Even all the trees are fake. They're all like metal trees. Wonder where they get food. Whatever. But what ends up happening is, Hector like explains to Miguel, it's just like, okay, if you go back, I will help you. I will help you get to Ernesto de la Cruz. You go back, you take my picture with you, and you put it on the ofrenda, because I need to get back to my daughter, because nobody's ever put my picture up on the ofrenda, so I can't go back to the human world, back to the land of the living. And he gives Miguel his photo, and Miguel's like, okay, and he's like willing to do that. And they're just like, okay, well, I know where Ernesto de la Cruz practices. Okay, so we'll go there. And we are then introduced they head off to where, Ernesto is supposed to be, rehearsing and everything. And at this point in time, Miguel's family is trying to find him. And, Imelda summons up her alebrije, which is called Pepita, who is this giant freaking panther-looking thing, jaguar panther-looking thing with wings, and it's neon, and it's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And, like, she sends it off to go to try to find Miguel. And, because, well, from their point of view, it's, of course, they want to get Miguel back to the land of the living, because that's where he's supposed to be, because that means that he can go back to his life and everything. And Milda wants him to go back because of that, but also so he can put her picture back on the ofrenda, because if they can't send him back, then they can't send the picture back. And then she can't go back and forth anymore on the Day of the Dead. So we see that. And, they also just want him safe. He's running around in the land of the dead with who knows how many other people. So they're trying to find him. And Miguel and Hector have gone to where Ernesto is supposed to be practicing. And they get there, and it's Hector kind of knows some of the people that work there and everything, and that's where he got his like fake, Frida Kahlo costume from, because Frida Kahlo was actually there, and she meets Miguel, and she ends up seeing Dante, and she like, oh, the mighty Xolo dog, and it's just like he's like guardians and guides and everything like that, and it was just a beautiful alebrije and everything. And Miguel's like, I think he's just a dog, and Frida kind of gives us a little bit more of an explanation as to what alebrijes are, and she has her monkey alebrije, which is very appropriate because in a lot of Frida Kahlo artwork, she has a monkey with her. And I think she even had a pet monkey in real life, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. I have seen the movie Frida about Frida Kahlo, starring Salma Hayek, but that has been quite a while ago that I saw that. That was like back in high school, I believe, that I saw that, and that was like over 12 years ago at this point in time. I did like the movie. It's just been a long time since I've watched it again. And so, she has like this monkey that is her alebrije. And we end up finding out, Miguel kind of ends up like, she like explains like her performance idea, which is like this avocado, and then all these dancers come out of the avocado, but they're all me. And then they have to climb up this cactus that is their mother, but also me. And then, just like all this other stuff in regards to that. I'm just like, I don't know if I ever understood Frida Kahlo's artwork, but it was very interesting to look at. Miguel kind of ends up giving her some music that she can use, like kind of coming up with it on the spot for her to be able to use in the background of the performance. And like they get along really well, and then like Hector shows up and he's like, stop bothering the celebrities, and he pulls pulls Miguel away, and then like it's revealed that no, Ernesto is not here. He's off at his, house having like this big party and everything, and it's just like, oh, okay, so I guess we have to get there. And during this time frame, we find out that Hector has, a bad nickname that is, him getting made fun of for the fact that the way he died was that he like choked on like on a type of sausage type of thing, Mexican sausage type of a thing. And like Hector was like, no, I didn't choke. I had food poisoning. Very different. And he's like very angry about that. And then it's like, okay, well, we need to get a guitar so that way Miguel can then enter a contest to go and be in, get the the chance to go and meet Ernesto de la Cruz. And it's just like, okay. So we need a guitar. So they end up going off to this like very rundown area of the land of the dead, which is kind of like the land of the forgotten to a degree. These are people who are remembered very well by the people that knew them in life. Stories weren't passed on. People who don't really have family to put up photos of them, don't have photos to begin with to a degree. And, all of them just kind of like take care of each other. Hector and the other ones all just kind of take care of each other. And they end up meeting, Miguel and Hector go to the guy who has, a guitar. And I cannot remember the guy's name off the top of my head, unfortunately. Chicharon. And they go there, and Hector's like, come on, Chicharon, let me borrow your guitar and everything for the kid. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you do that. Everything that I let you borrow, you never give back. And we see him like he keeps kind of Chicharon keeps kind of he keeps like glowing and fading and everything like that. And it's just like, it's explained that it was like, oh, he's being forgotten by the last person that knew him in life is completely forgetting him now. And Chicharon was just like, well, I wouldn't be able to play the guitar even if I kept it. So you can have it, but you have to play. And, Hector up to this point is just like, no, I don't want to play. And he's just like, if you want the guitar, you have to earn it. And Hector ends up singing this, it's like a folk song about a woman that by most accounts is very ugly, but like, the guy who's like singing it is just like, he's still in love with her, and he's just like, and if I was, better looking, maybe he'd give me a chance. And it's like this fun song. It's just kind of fun little song. And at the end of the song, we see Chicharon fade out, having what is called, the final death. He is completely forgotten by the last person in, the last living person in the world of the living that knew him. And he fades away, and it's hard to watch, but it sets up kind of the stakes for the movie, because Hector has explained that it was just like, my daughter is forgetting me, and I need to get back to the land of the living so that way I can see her again. And, Miguel's like, okay, and like he watches as Chicharon dies, and like they have the guitar, and Miguel makes a comment of like, well, I knew him, so when I go back to the land of the living, I can remember him. And Hector explains, no, that's not the way that it works. To be able to live on here, your stories have to be passed down from those who knew you in life. So that would be the whole thing of like, Mamba Imelda is remembered because Coco and the rest of her children and, Coco's children and everything passed down, memories of her, talked about her, kept her memory alive and everything like that. Hector was not kept alive by memories from, anybody else. And as were a lot of the other people. Even though Miguel did meet Chicharon, he did not know him in life, as in like, well, Chicharon was alive, and he, his stories were not passed down by someone to Miguel by someone who knew Chicharon in life. So there's that whole concept there. And what ends up happening is, they end up heading off to where this, in the Plaza de la Cruz, this big music festival that's supposed to happen. And they get there, and they get Miguel signed up to be in the contest. And he's just like, okay, well, what are you going to play? And, he's like, I'm going to play Remember Me, which is like Ernesto de la Cruz's big song and everything like that. And Hector's like, no, don't play that. Everybody plays that song. And it's like, we see all these different people playing different versions of, Remember Me, an opera, a funny version of this version, of that version, or whatever. And we see all these other like different performers on stage performing like different versions of Remember Me and everything. And I mean, like, they're not necessarily bad. There's even like a hard rock grunge, like, garage band version that was kind of funny. And it's like a fun way of like showing off all these different fun instruments, which is just really fun to watch. But it's just like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that one. So he goes, I'm going to do Un Poco Loco, which is, I believe, is supposed to be a little bit crazy, is the way that kind of translates out. And it's just like, okay. And Miguel then ends up explaining that he's really nervous because this is the first time that he's ever actually performed before. And Hector is just like, oh God, this is not helping anything. And he ends up trying to help Miguel kind of, shake off his nerves, that type of stuff, just try to help Miguel and everything. Which I'm like, okay, good on you. And Miguel gets up on stage, and he's like still very, very scared in regards to performing, which I'm just like, he hasn't performed before. He's like played his guitar before, and he knows how to play guitar, but he's never actually performed. Well, he knows kind of knows how to play guitar, but he's never actually performed before. And he ends up, he does start singing and everything, and then Dante ends up like dragging Hector up on stage to like perform with Miguel, and Hector and Miguel are both singing, and Miguel, Hector's, or Miguel is playing, and like Hector is like dancing around, and like his bones as they like jingle and jangle are like acting as like additional percussion, which is really fun. Really fun to watch and listen to. And they're playing and they're having fun and they're singing and dancing, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's a fun song. It's the concept of the song is that like when you love someone, even like some of the smallest things they do may drive you crazy, but you still love them. And so there's like that fun bit, and they finish performing, and then Miguel sees in the audience that Pepita and the Riveras have arrived, that they managed to track him down. And him and Hector, he drags Hector off to try to get them to escape. And Hector's like, wait, why are we leaving? You're about to win this thing. And Miguel's just like, I have to get out of here. And, this is when, first of all, the lady that's like hosting this thing, I never figured out that there was a way that they could give skeletons boobs, but they give this woman a skeleton boobs, which is kind of funny. And I'm just like, okay, sure, go with that. It looks like skeleton has a supermodel figure. It's kind of funny. Go ahead. And what ends up happening is she gets on the microphone and just like, we're looking for a living boy. His name answers to the name of Miguel. And like they never say his last name, and Miguel has never said his last name. And Hector has never said the name of his daughter. So these are all key things throughout the course of the movie, of course. And Hector's like, I thought you said Ernesto de la Cruz was your only family here. And he's just like, well, he's the only family that'll give you the blessing to go back to be a musician, as opposed to the rest of my family who won't let me do that because they hate music. And Hector is honestly and rightfully mad at this. And he's just like, you could have gone back hours ago and taken my picture back and blah, 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 blah. And and like Miguel's just like, I couldn't because, they won't let me do what I want to do because like earlier he had blown up in Mildo. It was like, you already lived your life. Why won't you let me live mine? You already got to choose your life. Why can't I choose mine, type of a thing. And what ends up happening is the dog is whining. One moment. He's like, no, there's a weird skeleton dog on the bed, Mommy. Come on, up on the bed. Or not. Do you want to come up on the bed? Hi, can I help you? Come on, up on the bed. Or go behind the bed, whatever. I gotta get back to recording. I love you, dog. Rainy is my Alabrije. I don't know. That'd be funny. Freddy was an Alebrije. Um, Although, admittedly, I did have the thought in my head, fleeting thought of like, he went to the groomer the other day, and I'm just like, well, if we'd have them groom his hair short enough, I could have, tried to dye his hair in a bunch of different random neon colors and make him look like an Alebrije. That might have gone well. And then just, let him grow his hair out again, and then it can, be like really colorful at the ends, and Rainy can have highlights. Rainy, I don't want highlights. Come on, up. He's like, I'm stuck. I can't go backwards. There is stuff on the bed. Help me. Come on, up. Why are you like this? I can't back up, Mommy. Come on, up. Whoa. There we go. Okay. Dog on bed. You can have the window later. And what ends up happening is, of course, Miguel and Heku argue, and like Miguel runs off, and he ends up like yelling at like Dante, because Dante tries to grab him and draw him back. Hi, Rainy. I just will figure out this stupid curtain. Are you trying to figure out how the curtain works, Rainy? Rainy, I will figure it out, or I will lay down on this. There you go. Okay, back to this. Okay, I'll tilt the screen so you can see the dog. And what ends up happening is, Miguel or Dante tries to drag Miguel back, and Miguel ends up calling him like a stupid, useless dog or whatever. And, Miguel's very angry at this point in time. I don't necessarily blame him, but, he is kind of not thinking things through very well. And he runs off, and Pepita and Emilda are actually following him. Yes, I know, you're a cute dog. And Pepita and Emilda are following him. Here we go. That works. Now you can see the dog better. And Emilda tries to get Hector or tries to get Miguel to come back. And, she's like, and she like does something that she hasn't done in a very long time. She sings. And, she hasn't sung since her husband left her. And she sings, and Miguel is just kind of frozen in his spot. And he hears this, and he looks at her, and he's just like, I thought you hated music. And she goes like, I used to love music, and I loved my husband. And the music that we would make together when he would play and I would sing and everything. And then we had Coco, and we needed a way to take care of her. And he wanted to go off and be a musician. And, it's this thing of like, the way that it's portrayed is that like, the reason she, didn't want music in the house was because, it was like, it'll make you turn into like this guy. It was just like, the reason she didn't want to have music in the house was because it made her remember her husband, and it made her be sad in regards to how much she missed him. Fix light source. And, it's that painful reminder of why he left her was because of music. And she kind of explains that a little bit to Miguel, but Miguel still ends up running off, and he ends up, finding his way to Ernesto de la Cruz's house, and via help from another band group that had ended up being the ones that won the music competition, he like sneaks in, and he ends up at the party, and he, there's like, footage from like different ones of like, Ernesto's movies playing in the background, and, there's like tons of people there, and he's like, I need to get to Ernesto, and he ends up jumping up on, kind of like this banister, and he ends up singing, and it's another one of Ernesto de la Cruz's songs, but I don't remember if this one has a name or not, or I'm assuming it's one of his songs. Yeah, it's one of his songs. He's like singing it in one of the movies in the background. And Miguel is like singing and making his way through the crowd, and like everybody's like, a little spellbound by this, and like we see Ernesto, And we see him, turn and see Miguel, and Miguel actually ends up falling into a guitar-shaped pool, which is just funny. And, Ernesto dives in and saves him, and, like, Miguel's, face paint is, like, washed away and everything from the water. And it's just like, you're the boy from the land of the living. You're the boy that's alive. And he's just like, you're what everybody's talking about. And, Miguel is just like, well, I needed to come and find you because you're my great-grandfather. Or my great-great-grandfather, and I need you because nobody else in my family will give me the blessing to be a musician. And Ernesto was just like, you're my great-great-grandson? I have a great-great-grandson! And he's just like, him and Miguel, like, get along great right off the bat. And, they're, like, talking and everything, like, he's taking Miguel around, his party, like, introducing him to everyone. So, like, have you met my great-great-grandson? This is my great-great-grandson. Apparently I have a great-great-grandson, just like all this other stuff. And, he's just, like, having fun and singing, and Miguel's just having a great time. And then Hector has managed to sneak into the party dressed as Frida Kahlo, because apparently nobody checks these things. It's very lax security if just one random guy dressed as Frida Kahlo can make his way into the party. Admittedly, you can't really die if you're already dead in the land of the dead, unless it's, you're forgotten, but, you get the idea. And what happens is... Ernesto takes Miguel into, like, this area where there's, like, all this food that's, like, the offerings to, Ernesto de la Cruz from, like, his fans and everything like that. And, like, they're talking, and Miguel's like, I really need to get back to the land of the living, because, like, he shows that, like, his arms are, like, pretty much entirely skeleton at this point in time. Like, part of his, body, his, like, chest and stuff is, like, almost fully a skeleton at this point in time. And Miguel and Hector and Ernesto's like, yeah, I probably should get you back home. And he, like, picks up one of the flower petals, and he's, like, ready to start blessing him. And then that's when Hector shows up, still dressed as Frida Kahlo, and then he peels off the fake eyebrows and the wig and everything, and he puts his regular hat and hair back on, which is just kind of funny. And he gets, he's like, you promised that you would, he's, like, looking at Miguel, and he's like, you promised that you would take my picture back and put it on the ofrenda. And he's just like, okay, I did promise that. And via this interaction, we see Hector and Miguel, or Hector and Ernesto end up, yes, they did used to be music partners and everything like that. But Hector died just before they were, going to make it big. And, Ernesto, like, kind of dedicated his career to that and everything. And, like, Miguel, or, like, Hector is like, you stole my songs and everything. You didn't dedicate anything to me. You stole my songs and everything. And what ends up happening is, it's revealed that Ernesto had poisoned Hector. And when Hector had stated that he wanted to go back to his family, because Ernesto was just like, I can't do this without your songs. And Hector is just like, no, I need to go back to my family because this music thing is not working. And I want to go back to them. And Ernesto then ended up poisoning him. And, that's how Hector died. And, Ernesto, Hector gets very angry at this. And, like, Miguel is kind of witnessing all of this and, like, finding out that this man that he believes is his great-great-grandfather is actually a murderer. And, Hector is dragged away by the security. And then Miguel ends up getting dragged away by the security as well, because Ernesto is just like, well, I can't send you back to the land of the living knowing what you just found out, because it could ruin my reputation, and my reputation is everything. And, so Miguel gets, dragged off and thrown into this pit. And what ends up happening is, Miguel's in the pit, and then he ends up finding Hector there. And they end up talking a little bit more, and Hector ends up explaining that, like, well, I didn't write Remember Me for all the fans and the people and everything. I wrote it for my daughter, for my Coco. And that's when Miguel goes, Coco? Just like, yeah, my daughter's name was Coco. And Miguel pulls out his picture, and he hands it to Hector, pulls out the picture of, like, Mama Imelda and baby Coco, and he gives it to Hector, and he's like, that's my Mama Imelda, and that's my Mama Coco, and this is And like it's revealed that Hector is actually, Miguel's grandfather, which, I've watched the movie and I still like that twist. I've seen the movie several times, and like the first time I watched the movie, I'm like, oh, okay then, I like that twist. And we get this moment where Hector explains that he wrote Remember Me, shirt, Remember Me, as a lullaby for Coco that they would sing every night, and that would be, just a song for the two of them. And then, Ernesto turned it into this big, like, party type song, and it's just supposed to be this simple little lullaby, and we get this little flashback of Hector and little Coco singing and everything. Like, he's like, I was going to go back to, Imelda and Coco and everything, and I couldn't. And, like, he's explaining that, like, my daughter, Coco, just before it's revealed that Coco is his daughter, he's like, my daughter is the last person alive that remembers me. And I know that she's forgetting me. And like we see that he keeps, having the moment where he starts like glowing and kind of fading a little bit and everything. And it's, very painful for when this is going on. And, Hector is of course being forgotten, the way that, Chicharron was forgotten earlier. And what ends up happening is, he explained that I was just like, I just wanted to go and see her one more time. That's why I wanted you to put my picture on the ofrenda, so that way I could go back to the land of the living and see my daughter one last time and know that she was okay, because I haven't been able to go back because no one ever put my picture up on the ofrenda. And, but if Coco dies, if my daughter dies before I'm able to go back, I'll never see her again, because once she dies, then there's no one alive that still remembers me, because she wasn't able to pass on stories. And then Hector can't go back to the land of the living, and because, his daughter would die, he would then vanish from the land of the dead, and he would never get to see her again. And, like, he's, like, doing that explanation to Miguel, and, of course, this one is revealed, oh, Coco is her name, and then, blah, 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 and Miguel is actually his great-great-grandson. And, he's just like, I'm proud that you're my family, because, like, a couple of minutes ago, I thought that I was related to a murderer. You're a vast improvement. And, they kind of get the moment where it's just, where you're, like, happy to realize that they are family and everything. And then Dante shows up, and then... so does Pepita, and then so does Imelda, and Imelda just like glares at Hector like, how did you get him into this mess? And he's just like, Miguel's like, he didn't get me into this mess, I got myself here, he was trying to stop me, type of a thing. And what ends up happening is, they get Hector and Miguel out of the pit, and Hector or Miguel calls Dante a good dog, and then Dante ends up shifting where he gets like color all over him, and he ends up being revealed that he's an Alabreje. He is a spirit guide, and he has these little dinky little wings, and he like falls, and then he's just like fine, and he can fly and everything, and it's just funny. And then of course they see the rest of the family, and Imelda sees that Hector is kind of being forgotten by Coco. And that means that like Coco is dying / forgetting. And Imelda, Miguel ends up kind of turning Imelda's own words on her, where he's just like, he is still our family. He is still Coco's family and my family. And he doesn't deserve to be forgotten. And, he deserves to get to see Coco again and everything. And Imelda is just like, okay. She relents, and like I think Hector kind of apologized, and I think he says something along the lines of like, I did try to go back to you, but I was killed because Ernesto poisoned me and everything. Like I think that's like explained somewhere along the line. And like the rest of the family is just like, okay, well, we'll help you. So they need to get the picture from Ernesto, because he has the picture of Hector, because he took it from Hector and took it from Miguel. And they need to get that picture, and then like all of the family have a flower petal that they can bless Miguel with to send him back to the land of the living. And what ends up happening is via Frida Kahlo's help, they end up getting snuck into the into the sunrise spectacular for Ernesto, and they need to get this all done before sunrise, because at sunrise Miguel can no longer go back to the land of the living because he'll be dead. Because dead. And they sneak inside, and Frida help them, and I just find that funny. It's just like they're all dressed in like the Frida outfits, and then they're all getting out. Like Hector keeps trying to help Imelda, but she's like, no, I can do it myself, and I love that. And then they end up going around, and they end up finding Ernesto. They run right into Ernesto, and I love what Imelda does. I love this scene. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, or this moment in the movie where she like. I'm sorry, I love this scene. And what ends up happening is they run into Ernesto. And she like takes off her shoe, which I'm pretty sure is a shoe she made herself while she was alive, and she whacks Ernesto across the face, and his skeleton head like spins around, and she's like, "That's for murdering the love of my life." And Hector pops up behind her. "I'm really the love of your life. I don't know. I'm still angry at you." I love that moment. I'm sorry. I love that moment. When I do my couples rankings for Pixar next year around Valentine's Day, these guys are definitely going to be on the list because I love them as a couple. They're adorable. And it's just like you murdered the love of my life and everything. It's like that they're trying to get you get the picture from him, and then it's like there's this whole like kind of chasing sequence throughout the concert area where Ernesto is trying to stop them from getting it, and the security is trying to get them, and the rest of the family is like helping try to stop the security and try to get the picture from Ernesto. And Imelda ends up getting the picture, and then she ends up actually getting lifted up and being on stage when Ernesto is supposed to go up on stage, and she's kind of like frozen in front of like the crowd of people that are there. It's this huge audience at the concert, of course, and she's like kind of frozen. And what ends up happening is she starts singing La Ronda, which I'm assuming is, I want to say an opera, but probably not. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the song. I apologize. She starts singing that, and Miguel had like handed Hector a guitar and like put him by a microphone, like he's playing in the background to for Imelda to sing to, and like Ernesto ends up on stage and trying to get his security to get her, and she's just like dancing around the security, which is just kind of funny. And then she ends up like dancing with Ernesto, trying as they're like trying to get the picture back and forth. And at the end of the song, she like stomps on his foot, which I love, and then grabs the picture and then runs off stage, which is funny. She's just like, ow, ow, ow. It's like Ernesto hopping up and down. Ow, ow, ow. It's just funny. And deserved. And, they get the picture to Miguel, and, Hector is kind of, is having a moment where he's kind of being, fading again. And what ends up happening is, well, not quite fading yet, but, Imelda picks up the pedal, and she's, getting ready to bless Miguel, and she's just like, I give you my blessing to go back to the land of the living and to put our pictures on the ofrenda. And like Miguel is ready for her to say, and to never play music again. And she goes, and to remember that your family always loves you, which like is the quote on the end of the video. And he's like, he's ready to take the pedal, and then Ernesto shows up and he drags Miguel away, and he's kind of ends up this moment where he's just like yelling at the Rivera family, and one of the great aunts ends up seeing a television camera, like turns it to point at Ernesto, and then like one of the other great aunts like pushes a button that like somehow turns it on. Like apparently they know how this stuff works, which I don't understand, but they know how it works. Maybe they worked in television or movies or something like that. I don't know. It's never explained, but they somehow know how this stuff works. And it ends up being broadcasted onto like the stage at the concert, and like it's Ernesto like revealing, he's just like, I'll make all of you disappear, blah 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 blah, and he throws Miguel over the side of the building, and the crowd watches as this happens and sees what Ernesto is doing, and Miguel gets thrown off the side of the building, which is really high up, and like Dante's going after them, diving after him to like save him, and like almost saves him, but doesn't quite get him. And then just before Miguel's about to hit the ground is when Pepita saves him and flies Miguel back up to the top. But unfortunately Ernesto's picture has been he gets dropped and everything, and like Miguel is very sorry about that, and while he's like apologizing to Hector about that, Ernesto walks out on stage, and like the whole audience just starts booing him, and he realizes that they saw what he just did. And then Pepita just comes out on the stage and like prowls across the stage, which I love. And she just like grabs Ernesto and like flies him into the air, like and bats him around like a mouse, like a cat would play with a mouse, and then throws him, whacks him with her tail, and then he ends up like landing on like a replica of the stage that he had died on the first time, and then squished by a bell again. I'm just like, poetic justice is so nice. And like then we cut back to the Rivera family, where the sun is about to rise, and Hector is disappearing, and they kind of force Miguel back into the land of the living, because like we see him he's almost going completely skeleton, with the fact that you can see like his like skin on his face is like fading, and you can see his bones, and like Imelda and Hector together kind of like force Miguel back with like no conditions on the blessing, just they just send him back, and he gets back, and he's in the mausoleum, and he sees the guitar and grabs the guitar, and he runs out of the mausoleum, which I'm like, okay, so there's like, well, it's the morning, so Day of the Dead is over, but technically it was Miguel's grandfather's guitar all along, or great great grandfather's guitar all along. But he didn't know that at the time, and I think it's supposed to be like, kind of like the land of the dead wanting something to be corrected coming into play here. And like, Miguel grabs the guitar and he's running back through the streets of Santa Cecilia and back to his house. And, we see, I think we see like one of his uncles and his cousin out there, and like they run after him. We see his dad and they run after him. And they're just like, because, that kind of reveals that like the whole family had been out looking for Miguel the whole night long. Which is, again, kind of a mirror of like the fact that, the Riveras that were in the land of the dead were out looking for him as well. And Miguel, gets back to the house, and like he runs into Grandma Coco's room, and he locks the door behind him, and he's just like trying to beg her to remember, her father, Hector, and like everything. And because like, if she fully forgets Hector, then he's gone. He's gone. And even though, it's like, even though Miguel has these memories now of being with Hector, those memories don't apply to keeping Hector alive, because Miguel did not know him when Hector was alive, and the story was not passed down to him. Beyond like the hateful story that, Imelda passed down. And what ends up happening is, the rest of the family bursts into the room, and they kind of like, his grandmother kind of like, you shouldn't do that to your great grandmother. She's been through enough and everything. And, Miguel is crying, and then Miguel goes and picks up the guitar again, and then he plays Remember Me for Coco. And as he's singing to her, this ballad type of a thing, much softer than like, the peppy version of it, but like the lullaby version that like that her father had wrote for her, that Hector had wrote for her, we see Coco kind of start to react, and like the rest of the family is watching this, and she starts singing along with it, and they're just like, because it's just like it's her having a bit more life in her than she has for a while. And she's Hector, Miguel sings, and then Coco ends up singing too, as I said, and then she looks around, and she's like, it's kind of like this amount of recognition coming in. And I think that like it has been stated that like music to a degree can be helpful with people that have Alzheimer's or something like that have memory issues. Sometimes music can be very helpful with this. I think there was like an example of this recently with the fact that Lady Gaga and oh god, I know this, and Tony Bennett, Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, because they did like a set of like some songs together again recently. There were like some old classics, and Tony Bennett has been having issues with Alzheimer's recently, and dementia or something like that recently, and that the second the music would start playing, he knew the words to every single song that they were going to be singing, and he was fine, and he was like he was there again in his mind. And that's kind of what they're kind of like, something similar to that is I think what's going on with Grandma Coco. And she's remembering her father, and she like pulls out a notebook that has all the different letters that were letters that he had sent her, and she has the little picture piece that her mother had torn off of the picture, and Miguel holds that up to the picture, and of course it matches up perfectly. And as Coco is talking, she's like, my father was a musician, and he would make wonderful music, and he sent me these letters that had his songs in them and everything. And like the rest of the family is just like listening, and it's just like this moment where it's like this family is kind of being healed. This huge rift in this family is being healed. And then we cut to like a year later, and we see that like Ernesto de la Cruz's building isn't as nicely decorated as it was before, and there's like a sign over him that says, forget you instead of remember me and everything. And like we cut to like the Rivera's place, and we see that now they like kind of apparently went through and like had it kind of verified that no, Ernesto did not write these songs, Hector wrote these songs, and they have like the letters as evidence, and like we see the guitar there and everything. And what ends up happening is we see that the photo of we see that there's a photo now of Coco there, of older Coco, because it's implying that she passed away, and it's Dia de Muertos, and we see Miguel holding his new little baby sister, and teaching her all the different names of the different family members and everything, and talking about them. And we see that the picture of Imelda and baby Coco, and then Hector with his picture put back where it's supposed to be, is like now in a new frame, and is on full display and everything. And we cut back to the land of the dead, where we see Hector, and we see him get scanned, and that he's allowed to go through, and we see this like relief on his face, and he's able to go through, and he's like in much nicer clothing at this point in time. He looks much better, much healthier as a skeleton, which is an odd thing to say, but he looks much healthier as a skeleton. And like he's like able to go into into departures and into the land of the living. And we see him and Imelda have like kind of healed their relationship the rest of the way, and we see them kiss, and that they're happy to be together. And we see Coco there as like her skeleton form, and he hugs her, and he's just so happy to have his daughter back with him again after so long. And then we see them with the rest of the dead Ramirez or the Riveras, and they head into the land of the living. And we see that like Miguel has started to like perform and everything, and that like the rest of the family, like some of his cousins, one of his cousins, his female cousin has like a guitar. It's not a guitar. This is not a guitar. This is a violin. This is violin, not guitar. I'm sorry. Has like a violin or a viola, and like I think one of his other cousins has like another instrument or something like that. And like we see them all playing together, and like Miguel, I don't remember if he's playing Hector's guitar or if he's just playing like a different guitar that looks very much like Hector's. I don't remember, but like we see all the different spirits, the souls, the dead family members around the living family members, and like how happy they are with each other. And like singing and dancing, and like Pepita and Dante have like gone back into the land of the living. Like Dante's in like his dog form, like Pepita is like a cat, and like they went to the family party as well to watch over this family. And we see everybody's just happy and dancing and everything, and like this family has kind of been healed and made whole again, with Hector finally being able to be there. And with, Miguel finally being able to embrace what he wanted to do for so long in regards to how much he loves music. And I love that concept. I love that concept that they do with that in the show. And I love the music in the show too. Remember Me is a beautiful song. And Poco Loco is also just a fun song about love and everything. And in regards to the cast, we have Anthony Gonzalez as Miguel Rivera. We have, I'm probably going to end up mispronouncing a bunch of these names, and I apologize. We have Gala Garcia Bernal as Hector. We have Benjamin Bratt as Ernesto de la Cruz. We have Alana Ubach as Imelda. Renee Victor as Abuelita, so that would be Miguel's grandmother. We have Ana Ofelia Murguia, I apologize, as Mama Coco. We have Edward James Olmos as Chicharron. We have Natalia Cordova Buckley as Frida Kahlo, which I know that Selma Hayek played Frida Kahlo in the movie about Frida Kahlo, and I kind of think it would have been kind of funny if they had her come in to play Frida in this, but that didn't happen. Enrique Iglesias is in there. Cheech Marin is in there. Alfonso Aurora is Papa Julio's, I believe, Miguel's grandfather. John Ratzenberger, of course, has a obligatory cameo in the movie at some point in time. I don't remember who he plays, but he's in the movie. And, I do love this movie. And yes, this review ended up being a little bit longer than I anticipated it being, and I apologize. But if you've watched all the way through, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to end up having like 2 side videos that kind of go in regards to this, because one of them is going to be about the Rivera family tree, because I kind of wanted to talk about that anyway. And then another one I wanted to do that involves One Piece, specifically Brook in One Piece. For the fact that he's a talking skeleton, but I thought of a very legitimate reason as to why I can talk about that in regards to the Land of the Dead. And actually kind of make it make sense. To a degree. Maybe not 100% sense, but to a degree. So I'll have 2 kind of follow-up Coco related videos in the next couple of weeks, depending on what's going on with new One Piece information that we get in regards to that with chapters. So I thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you have a nice rest of your day. And just remember to pass on the stories from your family members, so that way they stay alive in people's memories and everything like that, regardless of whether or not you celebrate Day of the Dead, because I just think that that's an important thing to do anyway. So, bye. Miguel, I give you my blessing to go home and never forget how much your family cares for you.